Okay, so our last remaining job with our guitar kit is to install our string trees. Now, string trees sit on the headstock and they serve to increase the downward pressure or the break angle of the strings over the nut. This prevents the strings popping out of their slots and also stops any rattle within the slots, which may create a little bit of vibration. So the way these go, they're generally reserved for the E and B and G and D strings. And you'll notice one has a deeper barrel and one has quite a shallow barrel. So the deeper barrel, the higher string tree, is obviously for the G and D strings, while the one with the shorter barrel is for the E and B string. And I would just sit them, you put them anywhere you like really, but I would bring them no further back. I would have the E and B in line with the tuner for the A string and somewhere in between for the G and D string. You need to be careful here, we need to make a quick mark. So really what I want to do is just go down dead straight. Obviously we're doing this last because we needed the strings installed first and we couldn't install the strings until the bridge was in place, in case you're wondering. And again, you'll see two different height screws. They insert like so, with the barrel section at the bottom, and they sit above the strings, so they're pushing down the strings. Okay, so now we've got the electronics connected and the hardware installed on this guitar. The last thing we want to do is just a basic final setup. Okay, so the first thing we want to do whenever we're doing any setup task is just to make sure the guitar is tuned to concert pitch. We want to make sure we've got the correct amount of tension on the neck before we start making changes. First thing we will check in the correct order is the amount of neck relief we've got. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can run a steel rule between the D and G strings. Just get down to eye level. Just check you've got enough clearance over the frets. This one has very little. Or another way to do it, and perhaps more intuitive, just fret at the last fret and the first fret and then just tap down at the 12th fret. The string should have some clearance over that 12th fret. In this case, it's virtually lying flat from here down, so I need to increase the amount of relief to the neck. Now, the way to increase neck relief is taking the Allen key that will be included in your packaging. What you want to do is loosen the truss rod. So we loosen the truss rod by turning the truss rod counterclockwise. So we put the Allen key in, feel around for the truss rod, and we'll turn this counterclockwise. Now, if for example you needed to straighten out the neck, we'd be tightening the truss rod and that'd take some of the slack out of the neck itself. So I want to just turn this about a quarter turn to start with. You don't want to make major adjustments each time you're changing the amount of relief. And that's certainly moved. Got a little bit more play there, but I'm still not quite happy. Now I'm just going to check that tuning again as well, as it will invariably change. And I'm just going to turn this another quarter turn, or sorry, an eighth turn, counterclockwise. You can see we've got more play there again now. Okay, so next thing I want to do is check the action, which is the height of the strings from the fretboard. Now this is fairly subjective obviously, but if you're not sure or you need a good starting point, I would suggest 2.4 mil on the bass side at the 12th fret and 1.6 on the high E at the 12th fret. And a way to measure this, just taking a steel rule, or in this case a string action ruler, and you're sitting that on top of the fret and you're measuring from the top of the fret to the underside of the string. So in this case that's pretty much spot on, but in many cases you will need to make minor adjustments, and a way to do that is just to adjust these individual saddles, the height of the saddles. Okay, so the way to adjust this, just turn the two screws on each individual saddle, and then you just bring the measure down again. Okay, so we've raised that action. We're just a little above 2.4 now, but I'm happy with that to start with. I tend to prefer a very low action actually, lower so I can get away with, but that'll do for a starting point. Okay, the next thing I want to check is the intonation. So again, I'm going to tune the guitar. So intonation is essentially checking if the guitar's in tune with itself. What we're really doing is just compensating for the mass of the strings. So if I just get the tuner in the window there, so you can see we're tuned to concert pitch almost. Okay, so our open string is registering an E on the tuner. What we also want to do is go up an octave to the 12th fret and also C and E. As you can see, we're perfectly intonated there. Make sure, oh no, we're looking a little sharp actually. Just check again. These strings are new, so they're going to bounce around a little bit, so I want to take the slackness out of the strings. Now, also just use the same attack on the string when you're testing the open to the 12th. So you can see we're just a little bit sharp there. So the way to compensate for that is we need to increase the length of this vibrating string. The first contact point for the string is the saddle, and the second contact point is the nut. So the length between those two is the vibrating length of the string, or the scale length. So if your intonation's a little bit sharp, what you want to do is increase the length of that vibrating string. So you can see if I bring the camera up now. Okay, so if I check the intonation now, check the open string. You can see we're pretty much spot on. Okay, so the last thing I want to check is just the pickup height. Now again, this is subjective as well. It will largely depend on what you're hearing, but if you need a starting point, essentially what I would do is aim for about a 2.4 mil clearance on the bass side and a 2 mil clearance on the treble side. You adjust these using or adjusting the mounting screws. And when you're measuring the height, you must fret at the last or second last fret and measure the height from the top of the fret to the underside of the string. Okay, so in this case, that pickup is way too high. We're going to just need to bring that down a little bit. The way to do that, just turn this screw counterclockwise and that will lower the height. Now, if you had individual pole pieces, this is a covered pickup, but in the case of the bridge pickup, for example, we've got individual pole pieces. You'd be measuring from the top of the pole piece to the underside of the string. And again, just don't forget to hold down at the last fret. Okay, so that's a little better, when it's still not quite at 2.4. So I'm just going to reduce that again a little bit further. As I said, about 2 mil on the treble side, just to compensate the thinner strings. And that's pretty much spot on now. So you do the same with the bridge pickup, obviously, and that's how you would adjust the height of your pickups. Now clearly I'm left-handed, so it's a little tricky for me to do a full demonstration of this guitar, but hopefully I can strum a few upside down chords. And we just test the different pickup positions on this guitar. So first I'm going to start in bridge position. You hear our tones rolling off and our volume's working. So middle position, which is a combination of the two pickups. Our volume's working well. And now neck position. Okay, now the important thing, I'm going to take my hands away from the guitar and hopefully we'll hear no interference, so no hum, no sound. That's good. If you did hear any interference or hum at this point, that would probably indicate you've got an issue with your ground circuit. So I would go back into the electronics cavity and just look for any of those black wires we installed earlier and just make sure no connections are broken, there's no loose wires there. Okay, the last thing I would check is just the integrity of the neck. So what I would do is just run up and down the neck, playing each fret on each string. So on. What you're listening for there is fret bars or any dead notes. If you do hear any problems, you can then adjust the neck relief or adjust the action appropriately. Okay, so that's the end of the project. I hope you've enjoyed building your TE style guitar kit as much as I have. Thanks for watching.